We just covered Joe Rogan when he was speaking with Shane Gillis, and the topic of the Trump plaques came up. And we learned how disgusted and appalled Joe was about Trump's new plaques in the White House. If you want to check out that video, we did it just a couple of days ago. Well, we have a new clip from that same podcast where the topic of Rob Reiner's death came up. And let's hear what Joe has to say about that.
He fucked up on Twitter this week.
What, with the Rob Reiner thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. It's all crazy.
So if he didn't do the Rob Reiner thing and then put up those plaques, I'd be like, that's funny. But then the Rob Reiner thing, you're like, God damn it, dude.
Well, the plaques are crazy.
The plaques are crazy.
The plaques are crazy. It's like the White House is supposed to be where each new president, the new guy comes in, you won the new election, congratulations, let me show you around, this is what it's like. These are all the photos. What's funny?
Another good one.
Loud.
I think they changed. Look at I think that's the photo for Joe Biden.
It's an auto pen?
Yeah.
Okay. That's so crazy. That's so crazy.
Yeah, but again, it's still funny. When
It's
he does crazy
kind of-
shit, when he does crazy
yes.
shit and it's funny,
It's
I like
funny.
it.
Right. But the
I don't
Rob
love
Reiner,
that, but
the Rob
it's funny.
Reiner thing is not funny, right?
No.
And that's like the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thinking. And when you see it with no empathy, that's when it's hard to like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish he could apologize. I know you can't and
No.
he won't.
Listen, there's no justification for what he did that makes any sense in a compassionate society. It's no different than people that were celebrating when Charlie Kirk got shot.
That's
Like,
that's the thing that bothers
it's
me.
the same kind of
Bro,
thing.
it'd be like if Obama tweeted,
Yeah.
rest in piss.
Imagine.
Like,
Oh my God. Imagine if Obama tweeted, something about someone, after they died in this way, that this person was a deranged, that person that hated Obama, and he wrote Obama like all caps. Imagine if
I
Obama
would love
talked
Obama.
like Trump. Do you imagine if Obama talked like Trump?
They hated Obama.
If that was his thing, he talks about himself in the
they hated
third
me.
person. That would be crazy. It just shows you how crazy it is the way Trump thinks and talks. It's just like the guy got sliced up by his kid.
Yeah.
Anybody that doesn't see that and go, "Fuck, man,"
Yeah, it's the worst.
it's
Also, the kid's claiming not guilty right now.
Oh, Carl. Okay.
I like it.
By reason of what?
I like the move.
Oh boy. It's so dark, man.
Yeah, it's really fucking horrendous.
But on the other side of it, the Rob Reiner thing was crazy because Rob Reiner made it a mission to try to get Trump out of office and to try to get Trump arrested. And
Sure.
there's this really weird video where he's sitting there with John Brennan and James Clapper, these two top dog spooks.
Yeah.
And they're talking about how this is unacceptable that Trump is president. I'm like, this is a crazy thing and high production value.
Yeah.
So it's all filmed together. They're coming up with reasons why they have to remove Trump from office. Maybe they knew something.
Look, all that sucked. I think that sucked.
Yeah.
But then, dude, you get murdered next to your wife by your son.
Horrible.
That's
yeah.
the worst thing possible.
The
and
worst
then the president.
Right. It's a crazy thing
Whatever.
to put out.
By the time this episode comes out, we'll have moved on.
Yeah, but it
That's
seems
how it
like,
works.
It seems like whenever something like that happens, where someone is happy that someone died, so many people just you feel so disappointed. You just feel like
Yeah.
it's so disappointing.
Yeah.
It's like why if you say that privately, that's one thing, which is also crazy.
Yeah.
But it's so disappointing. I mean, someone would have to be the worst person ever, and then you're like, you know what? Fuck that guy. But Jesus.
The most startling thing from that clip, Mike, is at some point Joe was talking about how Rob Reiner went on some podcast or something. He was talking with a couple of gentlemen about getting Trump out of office. And Joe was talking about how crazy that was. He goes, it's so crazy that Rob Reiner was out there talking about getting Trump out of office. There's absolutely nothing crazy about that. What's crazy is when someone gets stabbed to death by their own son, Then their wife gets stabbed to death. And then the president of the United States goes out and puts out a message saying, oh, he must have died because he had this derangement syndrome because he didn't like me enough. That's crazy. That's the crazy part that you should be calling out, not the fact that Rob Reiner was talking to people about getting Trump out of office. That's called democracy. Mike, make it make sense.
I don't think I can, man. I don't know why you keep putting it on me, but I will say this. Rob Reiner, obviously a huge tragedy there. We've made another video previously that talked about this exact situation that Joe Rogan and Shane Gillis were reacting to. But to see Joe Rogan, who again is a very notorious supporter of Trump, he helped Trump pretty much get elected, brought him on his podcast. He's had several members of the Trump administration on his podcast as well. And this sort of seems to be like a common thing with Joe Rogan, where he'll talk about how crazy it is or how somebody should say something or do something, or awareness needs to be brought to a certain subject, but then he just kind of moves on. And I fully understand he's doing a podcast. He can't sit here and talk about Trump all the time or whatever. And that's not even necessarily his goal. His goal it's not a political podcast to begin with. So I understand all of these things, but I'm just saying, even off air, he could be doing things. He could be at the very least like tweeting things or something, but it doesn't seem like he's doing much, if anything at all. And he's one of Trump's like closest allies. So it is refreshing to see, okay, well, he's sort of, calling things out for what they are. I can't think of any particular things offhand where Joe Rogan has sort of excused things that are blatantly crazy. But even if he has, it doesn't matter what's going on with this, that, or the other. The important thing is what's happening now with what we're talking about and what we're doing and what's happening. And he seems to call it out for what it is. So I think that that's nice to hear. But for me personally, it's just a little too late, too little too late kind of situation. But it's nice. I'll say that much.
Yeah, I feel you on the frustration there, because it's almost certain that Joe Rogan has Trump's direct cell phone number, and he's the one calling for someone else to say something. It's like, my man, you are one of the few people actually close to Trump, and you don't even realize it, or are you playing ignorant, or what is it? It's not enough to just say someone should say something. Like, you could be the one. Hey, yo, whatever he calls him. Yo, Don, that was a bit too far. Like, shouldn't you rein it in a bit? Like, the dude was tragically murdered. Don't you think, you could show some empathy? You could be the guy doing that, Joe. But, the thing about Joe is he likes to play the spectator. He likes to play the innocent bystander. I mean, that's kind of what comedians do, right? They just talk about things. They don't actually do things. But you mentioned that Joe hasn't made his podcast specifically politics. Well, I would argue him inviting JD Vance on, him inviting Bernie Sanders on, him inviting politicians on, Kash Patel, Tulsi Gabbard, and of course Trump, he made his podcast political. So that's kind of on him. I would say he's ventured into that forest, and now he's there. And now Joe is kind of a political figure, at least a political commentator, whether he likes it or not. But he made it that way by inviting those types of guests. And, there's nothing, I don't think we have anything negative to say about that. I'd love to see more politicians on there to get their point of view. We've talked about before how Kamala Harris should have gone on Joe, and what an epic fail it was on their campaign not to do that. It would have been nice to see. But Joe has more power, I think, than he realizes in some respects. Like, he could literally put out, like you said, he doesn't even need to message Trump directly. He could put out a tweet. He could put out a message or something on Instagram just saying like, hey, I think what Trump did was a little too much. But he doesn't. He doesn't really dip his toes into politics that much. He kind of just saves it all for the podcast and for people like us to stumble upon his clips and kind of talk about them. That's just how he does it.
Yeah, and I think that Shane Gillis also brought up a really good point, too, about imagine if Obama had made this tweet. And this is something that I think we touched on a little bit before previously as well. But it is just interesting to see the severe contrast when it comes to Trump and what he's able to get away with. And I know that, like you said, you could put out a message or like a tweet or something like that. And I know a lot of people might think, oh, well, I'm just, I'm just a comedian. I'm going to focus on comedy and whatnot, and that's fine. As a big fan of comedy, I fully understand that viewpoint. I know that Jon Stewart is a clear case of this, where he's extremely political, and people call for him to grill politicians and all that, and it's like, dude, he's just a comedian. It's the media's job to grill. So, as much as I'm coming down on Rogan for this, at the same time, I recognize like there is some slack there that he needs to be cut, because he is not a political entity per se. But I think that when we have this level of just like pure insanity coming from this administration, coming from the top, and Joe Rogan had a direct hand in it. This isn't just him commenting on something that happened, but like he helped make this happen. And he's very public about, having good relationships with all of these people in the Trump administration and whatnot. And I think that is the difference. That's where, okay, if you're going to take that stance, then you need to own it. You can't sit back and shrug it off and say, oh, well, somebody should do something or whatever. It's now you have the obligation. So if he didn't take that stance, then of course it would make sense why he's not talking about it, or why somebody else should talk about it, or anything else. But because he had a direct hand in it, I think he owes people an obligation to take a stand and stand up to this kind of nonsense. Because at the end of the day, if you have an opinion about Rob Reiner or his death or whatever, that's fine. Everybody's allowed to have an opinion. Trump having a negative opinion is not necessarily the problem here. The problem is the conduct. This is the president of the United States. His words matter. And on top of that, his words represent our entire country on a global stage. So it is very frustrating to see just this total lack of professionalism, this very, obsessive sort of, Trump makes it about himself when a man died a horrific death at the hands of his own son. It's a tragedy. I don't know. It gets very frustrating to sort of talk about, but I think this is why we need to. It sucks that we have to even keep reminding people of this, but it's like, hey, this office matters. There used to be a lot of dignity behind the White House, and having a trip to the White House used to be something that people would dream about doing and things like that, and having all of this prestige and class and like honor. But Trump has pretty much single-handedly demolished that. Even in his first term, he eroded a lot of that. And I'm not going to say that Biden necessarily restored it to its greatness, but Biden gave pause to the erosion. It allowed room for some healing there, I think. And Biden's response to the Rob Reiner death, I don't know what Biden's particular personal feelings were towards Rob Reiner, but his professional, his presidential response was presidential to me. Whereas Trump's is so horrific that even his own, even his own biggest supporters are coming out against him, not just Joe Rogan, but many others as well. So I think that speaks volumes and speaks for itself.